check.
Hi and welcome to RCKicks. On today's show, well, I've neglected the Falcons for a little bit, so they've got a bit dirty and I've got a few little upgrades to do. Over the last few months, I've picked up the Ampro Engineering front mount since he produced it. So that has to go in my running car. So that's a modification that has been sitting waiting for me to do. The bodies have all got very dusty from sitting up doing nothing, so I need to clean those. I have actually got some metal machined front uprights, but I've already fitted front Ampro Engineering uprights and upper and lower arms. So I'll just hold on to these. I did think about putting these on my Mint car, but it's completely original. Even the body is an original hand-painted body in great condition, so I don't really want to mess with it. They are fantastic and you would hardly notice because the finish is so smooth, but it's stock. I'm never going to drive it, so the extra strength is not really required. But they're so beautiful that I don't really want to put them on my running car, because if I flip it over and I scratch them, I don't think I'll ever be able to replace them again. Because these were run in a very small number, so there's not many of these around, but they are beautiful and they should be on a car. But for now, I'm not going to put them on here. If I break one of these while I'm driving, then I will fit these on the car, but for today I'll hold off for now. A few other things I need to do to the running Falcon. It's got a, what motor have I got in it? I've got a torque tuned motor. I'm going to put a Technigold motor in it, but I need to wire up some plugs, so I've got a set of Dean plugs, so I'm going to change to Dean plugs. My plan is to eventually do all my motors to Dean plugs so that I can swap them between cars much easier, especially when I want to do brush motor comparison running videos and things like that. In my Mint Falcon, I actually have a RX-540VZ in it, and then I have this Technigold. Both motors are not perfect, but I thought it'd be quite nice to have some more upmarket motors in these cars because they're just so lovely. Apart from that, that's pretty much it. Oh, one other thing. I'm running aftermarket suspension on my runner because the Falcon suspension tends to be quite stiff. You can obviously modify it and use different oil and have different amounts of holes and things like that. These aftermarket shocks work really well. They're lovely and soft and they're very easy, and they're metal as well. But one slight downside to them is they're a fraction too long, which means the car runs and it's not a problem, but on full extension it is putting the dog bones at a little bit of a sharp angle and they can ping out. One side seems to be worse than another. So what I'm going to do is in my TT02 Porsche build that I did, it actually came with the little inserts that you don't use that I can put inside these shocks. So I'm going to open the shocks up, dismantle them, put the little mount inside to lower the amount of travel. So that should fix that problem and stop the dog bone from pinging out, as well as improve some of the handling because it is quite long at the back. It's a simple job, but it just takes a bit of time because you've got to strip the whole rear suspension down. So that's it, nice little easy one today. So let's crack on. And what should I do first? I think I will do the motor first and get it all soldered up, and then move on to tearing down the front to put to the Ampro Engineering front end in. Right, let's crack on and get it done. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is put this Dean's connector onto this Technigold. Also, I just remembered that I've got a replacement sticker, so I'm going to peel off the original one because it's faded and damaged. The actual gold isn't too bad, but a new sticker will just brighten it up a little bit, so I'll fit that afterwards. I didn't mention that in the previous clip. Right, so I've got to put all this stuff on first. Now there's a million different ways to solder and it's up to you how you do it. I am no expert, so go at it as you like. This works for me. It's not brilliant, but I don't really have any failures with cabling coming loose or anything like that, so I'm happy with it myself. Just take your time and if you screw it up, you just do it again. That's why I have a whole box of Dean's connectors. I'm not too keen on these ones. They're great when they're done, but the plastic lip is very close to the mount, so you have to be careful that you don't melt the plastic. If you do, you can't then attach the plastic cover because it snaps shut. Stay tuned to the end of the video for a hint of something cool that's coming to RCKicks. It's only happened twice before, so you do not want to be missing out on this. Okay, so I've connected the Dean connector to the motor. I've also put the female on the electronic speed controller. There's nothing super special about this electronic speed controller. This is just a standard TBLE 02S. This does brushed and brushless, so that's why it has the weird extra wire, but I'm not using that because I'm going to be running brushed. So I've just used the yellow positive and the blue negative. That I've just left as it is. I haven't cut it off or anything like that because it's obviously, it's got a rubber coating over the top of it, so that'll stop it from, if I cut it off, I would then have to do something about the end of the cable. So I'm not fussed about that at all. What's next? Next I've got to remove the motor, take the pinion off and put that on the other motor, connect it back up again, cable tie it back into place, and that's the motor side done. Then we will move on to fitting the main front bulkhead. Unfortunately, to fit the main bulkhead, we have to take everything off. So it's a bit of a mission, but luckily it's all in good condition anyway, so I'm probably not going to break anything. Fingers crossed. As you can see, changing a motor on a Falcon is super simple. You've got two small screws and then two actual screws that go all the way through to hold the motor. Now there should be a heat sink in between the motor and the housing. I am waiting for one to come, then I will take the motor off and put it back on again. Oh, balls. Okay, so I've cleaned up the motor. I removed the original sticker from the Technigold. Now, because they've been on there so long, usually half comes off and half doesn't. What I find is the best thing to get rid of the random crud that's stuck on the motor is a bit of WD-40. That seems to cut through the sticky whatever mess that's left after, so you can get rid of that. Then if you want to just polish up the gold a little bit, I tend to use a little bit of Brasso. Also, I found that car T-cut polish works well, but just be careful because you don't want to cut all the way through. So it's just to freshen it up. Now this motor is not mint. There's a few little nicks. It's in pretty decent condition, but there's a few little nicks, plus the sticker had completely had it. So I had to take that off. So it's not going to go on the shelf as a bit of a monument because I don't have the box or anything, and I have motors that are in better condition than this one, Technigold that is. So I'm now going to put the pinion gear on it, get it in the car, and then I'm going to put the sticker on it so it suits the car, so it shows up. I must make sure I get it the right way round. One downside to using Dean's connectors for your motors, is what you'll see in a minute, is that they are quite large once you connect them up. Now for me, I don't mind because I have a lot of motors and I move them around between cars all the time, especially on the channel. It's just convenience. But for yourselves, you might find that you would rather go a different way, or just stick with these standard stock connectors. The motor is now all in. Next, I've got to dig the front out. That's the next fun thing to do to fit the Ampro Engineering. So let's crack on, get that done, and then we can move on. Now if you're thinking about going down the Ampro Engineering route for your Falcon, I can vouch for it. It does get a bit expensive, but I do like the parts. You will have to note that you won't see here, you have to drill out all these holes to the right bore Now you've got to be very precise about that, otherwise you can ruin them. I'm changing the centre section to Ampro Engineering, but there's no holes that need drilling apart from the top body mount, which I did off camera later on. So it's not as simple as just swapping out the parts, you have to put a little bit more effort into them. Now another worthy upgrade that I'll probably do to this car is, instead of using screw pins, change to split pins. When you put a screw pin in, as you put the last part of the screw in, you're actually putting pressure on the part, especially the upper and lower arms. So I think changing to just pins and split pins at the end, one on both sides, takes that pressure away and stops the arm from splitting. So I'll probably do that later on, but I'll need to try and find the correct length and what car came with that originally, and purchase that part to then put onto this car. Another mod that I will look into is, as you can see, I'm screwing the uprights to the side of the centre section. I think you could actually put a bolt all the way through and put a nut on the other end. Now, looking at the clearances, they're very tight, so you'd have to have exactly the right length bolt, and the nut would have to be quite a thin nut, but you would then be able to clamp all the way through. So that's another mod that could be done to this, and I'll probably have a look at trying that out. So that's the full front Ampro Engineering. Also, I've got the reinforced uprights as well, so that's probably about as strong as you're going to get a front end to a Falcon currently. I've removed the front bulkhead. That's perfect, but every time that I was using my running Falcon, I was always worried that this part was going to fail. And as we know, these parts snap off here and they also crack along here. So I will just put that in the parts bin, and I will always keep it just in case I need it. But hopefully this is going to stand up to my pretty gentle running anyway. I'm not going to be jumping it or anything. Hopefully, with a bit of luck, Tamiya are going to bring out a Riri Falcon end of 2020 to 21. I probably think it'll be more 21 with a bit of luck, but we'll just have to wait to see whether they'll actually modify the chassis at all, or whether we'll just get it as is. It will be nice to get some extra parts availability, like a front bumper and things like that, as well as the centre sections can get very expensive and hard to find these days. But we'll have to see. Whether they'll actually do a modification to the front bulkhead, I don't know, or whether we'll just get it as is. A lot of the Riris we've seen is pretty much as is, so we'll just have to wait and see. Now, patiently sitting in the wings is another Falcon that I have that needs to be fully restored. Now, this car looks very sorry for itself, but it's actually very solid. There's no damage to this car whatsoever, and it's all original. It's just absolutely filthy, and it needs to be fully stripped down and rebuilt. It's all original. It has all the original electronics, motor and everything, and it hasn't been messed with since it was originally built. You also need to drill out the body mount post. I did it off camera, otherwise you won't be able to do it once you've fitted it, because you can't get the drill bit straight and through the hole to clear it for the pin to go. So don't go fitting it before you do that, otherwise you'll have to take one off. that's the chassis done. Next is the rear suspension I need to take out so that I can adjust the height by, what have I done? Here they are. I thought I'd lost them then. Putting some spacers inside the shocks. That's the next thing to do. One of the dilemmas I have with this driving Falcon is I changed the suspension to aftermarket, and I'm happy with the way it performs, but it's not standard. So I keep flip-flopping back and forward between putting standard Falcon suspension back on this car. But I think what I need to do is I need to spend a lot more time with the original Falcon dampers and see if I can get them softer and moving more freely. Because every Falcon I've always had has always been, the suspension is always hard and jarring on these cars. So if I can dial in some originals, I'll be happy to go back to them. But these work really well, and these are obviously adjustable. What do you think? Do you think I should just leave them as they are, or is it worth putting the effort in trying to get this back to stock but working better? Put some comments below. So there you have it. Not a massive amount, just a few mods and upgrades to my Falcons. So the motor's in, the connections have been soldered, I've adjusted the suspension so that it's now sitting lower, so hopefully when it goes up in the air the dog bones won't fall out. There's no guarantee. I've made the suspension slightly stiffer. I then went back and made the front a little bit stiffer as well. I did that off camera just to kind of balance the car a bit more. Still softer in the front than the rear, but if you put it up against the original car it's slightly softer, which kind of helps a bit. And the front section is all done, but you can't see it because it sits under here. So the whole front is now done up. So there you go, that's pretty much what I wanted to do with the car. I will run it and see how I get on with the electronic speed controller and the Technigold motor, but I think I'll probably have to go to a different electronic speed controller, but that's no big deal. I can do that in another video. I only run this maybe 2 or 3 times a year anyway, so just to zoom around a little bit. I don't go off racing it or anything, so it only gets light use. Right, thanks very much. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next. Oh, I forgot. This turned up, didn't it? I forgot. Shall I open it? No. You'll have to wait for the next video. What do you think it could be? Well, stay tuned. Keep an eye out, and the next video will be out very soon. Take it easy. Bye-bye.